Good morning. Happy Wednesday. I hope everybody had an opportunity to get out and vote if you were in a Super Tuesday state. And I hope your vote mattered. I had only one sovereign citizen, active poofter, zapping zoomer, rapping boomer, or whatever the fuck he wants to call himself now. He's the only one who tried to do the name the crime bullshit. Once again, the officer only has to be able to reasonably suspect and articulate specific facts that would lead another officer to the conclusion that there was crime afoot. Not that a specific crime was happening, but that there was, generally speaking, crime afoot. So that was expected, but I honestly expected more comments about name the crime. Anyway, some other comments that I had. One was Michelle, who is ever solely and completely on the auditor side and is anti-law enforcement and completely incapable of seeing the other side of the coin. She said, "You almost said hunch." Well, yeah, I probably did. But the officer needs a hunch. What people fixate on is that it can't be a mere hunch. And mere works on hunch. Those two things are together. Mere is an adjective and hunch is a noun, and the adjective modifies the noun. So if it's just a mere hunch, then obviously it doesn't justify the detention. But if it is a hunch that is supported by specific facts, which the officer can articulate, then it is reasonable suspicion. So that's those words. Words have meaning. So got to pay attention to those words. Then we had Remo. I'm going to call him Remo Williams. That might be a movie character name. I don't know. Anyway, he came with two, so he came to party. One was a article that was discussing how just walking away from officers doesn't give probable cause. And I just want to advise everybody, caution everybody not to read too much into articles. The article is somebody's interpretation boiled down of case law. It'd be like trying to quote me. It is not going to get you very far. It's the cases that matter. And just walking away by itself, if that's all the officer can articulate, might not be enough. But if there are other facts surrounding that walking away that the officer can articulate that justify his reasonable suspicion, or that justify his suspicion to make it reasonable, I should say, then all of a sudden that could be something that is articulated along with the walking or with the other facts to make it justified. For example, I was digging around in South Carolina cases about rolling down windows, and I came across an interesting case, and I'm going to share with you the general idea of that case. The officer ran a plate and it came back registered to a man who had a suspended license. And in South Carolina, it's perfectly acceptable. That gives reasonable suspicion to pull over the vehicle because the owner has a suspended license. So he pulls over the vehicle, he's approaching the window, and he sees that it appears to be occupied by a woman. And he asks her to roll down the window and to present ID. And she cracks the window and she fumbles through her purse, finds her ID, hands it to him. She is in fact a woman, but because she has been mumbling, she's been slurring her words and mumbling, and because she didn't roll the window down all the way, those were his two articulable facts. She slurred her words and she only cracked the window. She wouldn't roll it down all the way, despite him asking her to, apparently. Those were his articulable facts that she was drunk. Now the question before the court, and she was in fact drunk. The question before the court was, it was a suppression hearing, and the issue presented was that a reasonable suspicion. A detention has to stop. A vehicle stop has to cease as soon as the the reasonable suspicion is allayed. So as soon as he walked up to the window, the defense argues, and saw that it was a female driving a car, well, his reasonable suspicion was gone because it was a man who owned the car, who was registered as the owner of the vehicle. And he sees a woman, he knows the man isn't driving. Ergo, reasonable suspicion gone. His articulable fact that the car was registered to a man with a suspended license, and therefore the driver might have a suspended license, all of a sudden it's gone. Well, the court didn't agree, and this is entirely off topic. The court didn't agree, and the court said, well, just because she looked like a woman didn't mean that she was necessarily a woman. It didn't mean that his investigation had to cease. He could still get her license to determine whether or not she was actually a woman. So I thought that was interesting. And the other thing that Remo Williams did, I said he did too, the other thing he did was that he brought up a conviction that was overturned. And you don't want to talk about convictions when people are talking about reasonable suspicion. Two totally different levels of proof. One is beyond a reasonable doubt, and the other one is, just, is it reasonable? Not even is it likely, not even is it probable, just is it reasonable? So yeah, you can't use convictions being overturned to deal with reasonable suspicion. Reasonable suspicion is, again, almost impossible for an officer of reasonable intelligence who is reasonably invested in the situation to fail to be able to come up with. It is a ridiculously easy thing for officers to come up with. And if they don't, well, either you truly were squeaky clean, or they're incompetent, or you weren't doing anything unusual. And again, unusual behavior is something that is most likely going to justify reasonable suspicion. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.